Today we're going to be talking about Fenax and Tallia. Hey, welcome, I'm LeilaFox. Today's lore story is going to be for the companion champions Fenax and Tallia. And I thought it's really sweet for this time of year. We're in February, which is Valentine's Day month, so it ends up being a perfect story to share for this month. Now, these two are epic champs in Raid Shadow Legends, and they both belong in the Sacred Order. What I find is interesting is Raid tends not to give very good stories or not very fleshed out stories to champs that are non-legendaries, but their story is actually pretty good. But before we get into it, let's check out the Sacred Order lore faction as a whole. For centuries, the Knights of the Sacred Order were charged with cleansing Tallia of evil in all its guises. But since the declaration of war, they have sworn allegiance to the Queen of Arabia. In league with the Queen's necromancer, these once holy knights now enforce Her Majesty's will and guard her chattel. Let's get into the lore story for Fenax and Tallia from the Tallarian Lore Book of Champions. Sometimes love blossoms early and remains in the hearts of those touched by its warmth for the rest of their lives. Such is the tale of Fenax and Tallia. He was the son of a destitute noble serving in the household of Tallia's father, she a cherished heiress. Though they had sworn to marry one another as children, no one had taken that vow seriously. And by the time Tallia's father realized that this was more than childish games, that their love was not fading, it was far too late. The girl was far too headstrong and wild to be cowed into obedience, and the aging lord had come up with a cunning and dark plot. Fenax, then a squire, was sent with an important message to a neighboring bannerman. Alone with no escort, of course, as messengers had to travel light and swift. By the Lord's design, a group of orc raiders was meant to ambush and slay Fenax, a tragedy to be sure, but one that his daughter would forget in time. Unfortunately for the Lord, he failed to take Fenax's wit into account. Though indeed ambushed and brought low, he managed to convince his captors that he was, in fact, the heir of an important baron who would pay the savages handsomely. The greedy brigands were quick to drag him off to the camp instead, hoping to fool the Lord and gain both rewards. And when the searching party that went after Fenax upon him suddenly going missing on the road, Tallia's father became concerned. He ignored his daughter's pleas to send a group of men-at-arms to rescue her beloved from the orcs, who left plenty of traces to be identified. The Lord refused in anger, yet once more he was miscalculated. Furious, Tallia escaped the castle to mount a rescue on her own. A dangerous venture, to be sure. But fate was not always cruel. A Sacred Order patrol came across the young lady, their sergeant a man of honor and piety that did not shrink away from his duty to protect the innocent. With their help, Tallia managed to find and free Fenax from the raiders after a vicious battle in which she, too, was baptized by fire. Though after a loving embrace was shared and words of comfort were spoken, Tallia could not help but wonder what was so important that her beloved had to risk his life to deliver. She unsealed the letter only to devoid of a single drop of ink. But it was not needed. The empty parchment spoke of her father's betrayal louder than any words could. Hurt and furious, the two young lovers did not, however, let themselves be broken. Unwilling to return to the man that would see them separated so cruelly, they both swore an oath to join the order and dedicate their lives to Lemea, an oath that they have carried out with honor against servants of darkness beyond counting, together. Hey, so that was the story for Fenax and Tallia, and there's a couple things I did like about it. Is one, I feel like it was kind of more like a traditional, older school kind of knighthood story, right? Because we have Fenax who's a squire, we have Tallia who's an heiress, and these two make a promise as children that, they'll grow up and they'll marry each other. And what ends up happening is the father doesn't want that. Chances are he probably wants her to marry a knight or some nobleman and tries to have Fenax killed. But that doesn't go the way that he wants because Fenax is too smart. What I also like about this too is Tallia also kind of becomes a heroine in her own story in some ways, right? Because she knows that her love is in trouble. So what does she do? She sets out on her own to pretty much launch a rescue, right? And so she's out on her own and she comes across these knights from the Sacred Order, these holy, pious knights who, without a question, no hesitation, not wanting anything in return, help her in her quest. They end up finding Fenax, they free him, and then the two of them, again, they embrace, they're in love, and they decide to start their new life together in the Sacred Order. So I think it's very sweet. It's very like old school, like I was saying. And what I had also said in the beginning of the video is I like how they actually, like the story's a bit fleshed out, right? Like I think it's better than a lot of the other stories that I have shared for some of the epics or rares in this game. This one was actually nice and did find a way to kind of pair and bond them together in a realistic way and kind of share how they end up in the Sacred Order. One thing that they don't exactly talk about, though, in this story is they don't exactly get into how their abilities are paired. So we know in the game that when Fenax and Tallia are together, Tallia does be able to place a bomb, Fenax allows a decrease in the detonation time for the bomb, and it really doesn't explain that anywhere in the story, other than maybe the one line where it says she's baptized by fire, so maybe that has something to do with it, not really sure. So that I might have wanted to see a little bit more, but it is a possible because these two champs are much older, that these, like the more recent stories, I tend to find where they find ways to link their abilities into the lore story. So it's possible just that, you know, because it's an older story, they just didn't. So what you guys think about the lore story for Fenax and Tallia? Leave me some comments down below. Let me know what you think. Did you enjoy it? And thanks for watching. Hey, if you enjoyed this video, check out some more videos up here in the playlist on the top right.